Future Proof is sponsored by Equipping Young Adults for Life, inspiring student resilience, championing hope.
Hello and welcome back from the break. Thank you so much for joining me, Sarah Hopwood, as I'm running through some negative mindsets that don't serve us. And in earlier programmes I've covered some of the mindsets up at the front here, thinking that everybody else is better than us, that we don't deserve certain things, it's not my fault, everything's too hard. And today I'm talking about the negative power of complaining and saying that complaining is remaining. So in other words, we stay where we are. So if you're complaining about something, then it's normally negative, because we're not speaking something up. If we're complaining, it's a negative mindset. And all the time we keep complaining, then we're keeping that negative mindset down, which is not serving our health. It's not helping us feel well. And also it's not helping us see some good stuff around us. And in the first half, I talked about the Apple experiment. But if you Google the Big Apple experiment, then the name Nikki Owen comes up, and there's videos on the power of emotions and the effect that can have actually on things such as apples. And I talked about labelling, cutting an apple in half, which I did, and putting one half in a jar named love and the other half in a jar named hate, and sealing them. And then every time you walk past them, it's ever so powerful in a school or in a community of people walking past and giving their kind of hate look or feeling to the apple that's named hate, or the love one, giving their love emotions to the love apple. And over a period of time, within a week, you can actually see how the hate apple deteriorates, rots far quicker than the love half, even though when it was first cut, it obviously was two halves of the same apple. Incredibly powerful. But when we stop doing something, we have to make sure we put something in the gap. So if you've ever given up smoking, giving up drinking, giving up biting your nails, giving up gossiping, giving up anything, if you try and give something up, then if you don't actually put something else in that gap, then over time you'll just automatically go back to the bad habit or whatever it was that you were doing before. So we need to action and on purpose, with purpose, on purpose, put something in the gap. And what has come to mind is Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama's book, The Book of Joy. I've actually got it on Kindle. It's a fabulous book. So do read it. And it does seem odd that these two, they call them gurus, have put their heads together. But it's a great story talking about their relationship of huge friendship and laughing, and also disagreements and good discussions. But these guys, Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, talk about the 8 pillars of joy. And I'm going to suggest, why don't we look at what those 8 pillars of joy are and use these feelings of joy to put in the gap when we stop complaining. So if we complain, we remain. But if we want to stop complaining, we create a gap, and let's put the 8 pillars of joy in the gap. So I'm going to write them up and maybe just kind of talk through them a bit. On the flip chart here, you can see other things that I've covered in previous programs, and maybe towards the end, I might actually run through them all again. But anyway, for now, let's look at the 8 pillars of joy. So the first one is perspective. And if we have a situation which we don't like, if I do actually 8 pillars of joy, if we have a situation we don't like, then if we change our perspective, on what is going on, then it can actually make us think about the thing very, very differently. And there's a very famous story of an artist who had their picture exhibited, I think it was in Italy, and many critics said, well, he's obviously a very good artist, but the perspective of the painting is wrong. And one person stood there long enough to say, why is the perspective wrong? And then he realised, and the penny dropped, and he realised that the artist had painted the picture from a place of humility, from a place of prayer. And as soon as then the critic got on the knees, then the perspective of the picture, where the hills looked like they were falling out of the picture and all sorts of things when they were stood, as soon as they knelt, everything magically went into place. So let's maybe change our perspective on things, which can help our joy. But talking of humility, humility is hugely important. Humility. Humbling ourselves is something I think we have to do on a constant level. And there's a great saying, isn't there? Pride comes before a fall. And if we're criticizing people, if we're complaining, then we're not actually coming from a place of humility. And often if we are criticizing a lot, then we are actually seeing ourselves superior and better, which leads us into pride, which, as we say, pride comes before a fall. So humility is another pillar of joy. Humour. Do you know, these two guys in the book talked about the power of humour. The Dalai Lama spends his whole time laughing, as much as he can anyway, and it's amazing how it releases that sense of joy and if you like, freedom of spirit. And if you're in a bad situation, why not actually, even if you have to make yourself to begin with, try and laugh about it. Friends of mine who've been married centuries, they say that their success to their marriage is that sometimes they argue so badly they actually get to a point of laughing, and the laughing disperses the anger, and it really makes you change your perspective and think about the whole situation differently, even if it's just about letting it go. Next one is acceptance, and always remember that change always happens at the point of acceptance. So until you are prepared to accept something, and it could be accepting to agree to disagree, then you won't actually move forward to a place of joy. So acceptance is absolutely key, and holding grudges and what have you is the opposite to acceptance, and we're hurting ourselves more than we're hurting anybody else if we don't really try and find a way to accept. And of course, acceptance could be actually separation and walking away. That could be a place of acceptance. But I would suggest, even in that, if you can, find a sense of peace so you don't take the hurt and the baggage from that situation that you have accepted. You don't take the baggage with you to a new situation and let it all regenerate again. So be very careful there. Forgiveness is fundamental. And yes, this can have a religious turn on it, but it isn't a religious statement. Forgiveness, I would suggest, is a basic, fundamental, basic human need. Because if we don't let stuff go and we don't forgive, then actually we are hurting ourselves. And medics tell us time and time again that there are many diseases in our body caused through stress, through lack of forgiveness. And there's a great saying, when you forgive somebody, you let a prisoner go. I've spoken about it before, and it's the strap line at the end and saying the prisoner is the person who's holding the grudge. Gratitude. Have an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of thanks. Very, very important. And it makes us appreciate what we have got and draws our attention away from the gap of what we haven't got. The discontent is raised when we keep focusing on the gap. As soon as we have an attitude of gratitude, immediately we're focusing on what we have. We're not focusing on the ether. Okay, compassion is very important. Empathy and compassion, it's a very, very large part of emotional intelligence. Compassion is actually sitting alongside somebody. It's not the same as sympathy. It's more, I would suggest, perhaps closer to empathy, and it's just feeling, it's having a heart for what someone else might be going through and having compassion for them. I think it leads to an action of helping in some way. And when we help, and I've had to learn this lesson, it's a painful lesson, to not always help how we think we should help. It's quite a good idea to either ask them how we can help, or maybe ask an expert in the situation how best it is to help. Sometimes through helping, if we're not careful, we unwittingly cause more pain. And that leads to the last one, which is generosity. Be generous of heart. Generosity is giving more than you would otherwise have given, and that can be in material things, it can be in heart and understanding, it can be in time. It's generosity of spirit. We could even be generous in all of these things: forgiving, acceptance, generous in humour, in humility, generous in perspective. Give something you would normally give, and then see if there's a way that you can maybe find a way to maybe give a little bit more of the same, or it could be a little bit more, but perhaps in a slightly different way. So I commend to you, complaining is remaining. So make sure you don't remain complaining. Take care.